Hi, this is Trisha. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be making this lovely card with a few products from the Greetery. I recently did a little mini haul video and I will link that up above. But I'm going to be using 3 of the products from that haul. I have the Picturesque stamp set, the Wildflower BotaniCuts, and the Cozy Cup Coaster, maybe, BotaniCut, or die, excuse me. So I'm starting with the picture, and I'm using Distress Oxide inks. You can see the colors here on my screen. And of course, I will link all this below as well. And I have little finger daubers. This is actually what Betsy from the Greetery does if you ever watch her videos. And I had not really used these finger daubers with the oxide inks, but I really love how it smooths the ink out if you have a big solid surface, and it makes it stamp beautifully. Now, this I get a chuckle out of. This is an air hockey handle or puck. I don't even know what you would call it, but one of the little things that we use on our air hockey table, and it works great to rub over my MISTI and give me good pressure. So I did my second layer on my picture. You can see it starting to take shape, and here I am stamping that third layer to give it that final bit of depth and make it look 3D. And I did all that on Neenah Solar White, and then I cut it out using the coordinating die. So now I'm going to get started on the fillers that are going to go in that picture. And you can snip all of these little individual dies apart, but I also find that they fit just perfectly on an A2 sized card panel. So I left them all together and I ran them through my Big Shot, and then I'm leaving them nestled into their negative space. And I'm going to put them onto a sticky mat and leave them together while I color them. You can see the way these were designed. All the different shapes of flowers are nestled together, so it makes it really easy to kind of color them all together, each different shape, its own color. And I'm using the finger daubers again to do that. In fact, I haven't even added extra ink to these. I'm pulling them out of my storage case and just kind of using the ink that's already left over on top of my little daubers. So I've used some Tattered Rose and some Spun Sugar so far, and I'm just going to continue with some pale colors. For these circular flowers, I'm using Antique Linen. Again, just kind of what's been left over on my finger daubers. And then this group of flowers is a very light application of worn lipstick. And I decided that that was really all I needed for this card. Were just 4 different clusters of flowers. So I'm going to move on to the leaves and color all of those in using the exact same process. So I've got some crushed olive here, and I say leaves, I guess they're stems too, sort of branches. I've got some crushed olive, and I will use some, I think this is peeled paint that I have there, a little mowed lawn, and this looks super bright, but if you just put this in some of the areas and you just have some variation, it really doesn't matter where you put this. I'm not paying attention to shading. I just thought it looked more natural if I just didn't have a flat, solid color. I want to have some variation in these stems, but they're so fine once you pop them out of their negative space, you really can't tell, you know, there's no rhyme or reason to where it's dark and where it's light. I do need to get a darker color of Distress Oxide ink though. I think I need like either that Rustic Wilderness color or what's the other one? I'm not sure. But maybe that's Shabby Shutters I'm using, not peeled paint. I'll look it up. But I do need to get a slightly darker color. So I got all my greenery colored in, and now I'm going to add some details with some colored pencils. And I like to get a nice sharp point on there. and just put some little flick marks into the centers of these flowers. This is nothing fancy, no special skills required. It just darkens the color in the middle of the flower, sort of the same principle I was just talking about with the greenery, where you just don't have one solid color, you've got some variation. So where possible, I am going to put the color of the pencil that I'm using up on the screen for your reference, and I will also list them below. These little flowers have little, well actually most of the flowers have some sort of detail that the die creates. The ones I'm working on now have tiny little dots impressed into them. Some of them have the little score lines, like the circle ones have little score lines going out to the sides. Others just have a single dot in the center. So it gives you a good starting point as to kind of where to create your shadows and your detail marks. But you can see how roughly I am doing this, just very, very simple little strokes. And these that were down here, I think this was the spun sugar ink. I'm making them a little bit peachier by using a peachy colored pencil for the centers. I was trying to get a little differentiation between my pinks. So I went around and I did the same thing with a darker green on all of the foliage. And then I was going to pop these out and I thought, you know, I've got all these pieces. I might as well color all those other little die cuts and save them for a future project. So I went ahead and did that. Now I do have a tip. I like to hold this real flat and rather just shake everything out into a pile. I try to poke with my pokey tool and make groupings on my work surface so that it's really easy to find the pieces that I'm looking for. So you can see I'm moving my paper around and I've got all of the similar flowers clustered in the same area by holding my paper real low and flat and just poking them out through the negative space. So the ones on the left are the ones I'm intending to use. The ones over to the right I did end up putting in a pile because those will go into a little jar for a future project. For the leaves, I just sort of wiggle my paper back and forth and they pop free beautifully. I did use a metal shim for these because they are so intricate, but look at how easily and clean those come out. They just end up looking so pretty. And these are pretty with or without the flowers. They make excellent, you know, greenery and background. Looks like almost little berries, but you can use them with or without the flowers. So to assemble these, I am working just on a little piece of scratch paper and putting a tiny dot of liquid glue. You can use any liquid glue. I'm using this Nuvo Deluxe. But I was fiddling around with this and just sort of separating all of those little scored lines. I shouldn't say scored because they are actually cut, but they're little slits. And I was trying to get them to have a little more dimension to them. So I was just fiddling with them with my fingernail to separate them. And then that tool that I have in my right hand is just a little like sticky-ended jewel picker. And I find that really helpful working with these tiny little die cuts to place them right where I want them and give them a good press down so that they stick in place. So then you have this beautiful little wildflower element, and there's a million uses for these guys, and I can't wait to, I'm so happy to have them in my stash now, and I feel like I can use them on so many different cards. So I'm working on the next little sprig now, and you can see that each one of these greens has a different number of like stems for the flowers. So you do end up with some excess. I have one extra little blush, kind of plus shaped, and one little half circle of the yellow ones. So I'll just put them in my pile and save them for another card. I'm going to have lots more of these pink ones because I only used 2 buds on that one. And then this one has 3 stems on the top, so I'm using kind of these taller, they almost have like a I don't know, lilac shape or something. I'm not good at my flowers, so I don't know what that is. So I'm going to have some extra little buds there as well. Now I was looking at these and all three of my pinks just looked a little too similar. So I thought that one on the far right, I'm just going to deepen up, and I got my sponge dauber that has the picked raspberry ink on it, and I'm just tapping a little bit of darker ink just to make that color a little different than the other two. So now one's a little more blush, one's more of a true pink, like a pale pink, and the other one's more of a raspberry pink. And I liked that better. This other green that I grabbed, I like that with no buds on it. I feel like it adds just some pretty greenery in the background. So here I am trying to create a little arrangement, and I edited a lot of this out because I tend to fiddle with stuff for a long time and figure out where I want it until it seems just right. So I edited a lot of that out. I kind of liked that shape, but I wanted one more of those green pieces to fill in to the left. So I did cut another one of those off screen, and you'll see I add that to my final project. But because I liked how these were organized, I went ahead and adhered it all together. I shouldn't say adhered, but pressed some Glad press and seal wrap on it to keep it all together. There's that second green piece that I'm adding in to fill out my arrangement. And I'm fiddling with that for a little while, and that will be how it finally looks. So moving on to my other elements, I wanted to use this cozy cup coaster. I always say this one wrong. Die, and I love how intricate and beautiful that is. And I did use, again, a metal shim for this because those are tiny little pieces, but you see how easy it comes out? I just wiggle, 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 and all that little fringe comes out. So I decided to make a slimline card, because I liked having the coaster down at the bottom and leaving some white space up above. So I kind of got that laid out how I want, and I'm just gluing the coaster flat down to the page, no dimension or anything. And once it has a minute to stick, then I can peel back that press and seal wrap with my whole picture and arrangement still intact. And then I can get to putting some adhesive behind that. Kind of fluffing up the fringe on my coaster a little bit just to kind of make it look a little more loose and natural. And after I'm done, I'll trim off that little overhanging excess. So I wanted my picture to be popped up with some dimensions, so I'm going to use a lot of foam tape. And I went a little nuts. I have tons of foam tape on the picture, and then I even cut tiny bits of foam tape and put them behind a lot of the flowers. And I was also careful to try to adhere where those flowers crossed over one another. And I added some dots of liquid glue for that, just to keep my arrangement in place and make sure that nothing shifted around. So here I'm carefully peeling this back. And then I will even kind of tug on these a little bit and make sure that they're in there nice and tight. But I didn't secure every one of the edges because I like to have them lifting a little bit as long as they're not going to come loose. So I'm just trimming off the excess of my little die cut coaster. I feel this is just so pretty. I mean, you cannot go wrong with that picture and those wildflowers. So I'm using a Jennifer McGuire trick here to stamp a whole bunch of sentiments in a row by just shifting my paper up. This is a sentiment from an older Hero Arts sentiment set that I had in my stash. And it just says Deepest Sympathy. I think I might have trimmed it. It might have started by saying with Deepest Sympathy. I don't know. Anyway, and I'm just cutting a whole bunch of those strips out. I figure as long as I'm doing it, I'll save some for future projects. And those are just stamped with embossing ink and then white heat embossed on a dark gray or a medium gray paper. And I'm popping that up with some foam tape, and I use my creative corners from my Misty. That's a great way to get things straight on your card. And I am adding some additional sentiments to the inside of my card. These both come from a Hero Arts set. It says, "Thinking of you and sorry for your loss." Unfortunately, I do have some sympathy cards to send out this month. So I'm taking these teeny tiny little self-adhesive pearls and I'm putting those in the centers of some of my flowers. And then just to change things up a little bit, I'm using alcohol markers to color a few of them so that not all of my centers are white. And I really like how that looks. You can see on the flowers I'm finishing right now that those are more of a blush colored center. And it just catches a little bit of light and adds a little extra finishing touch. I'm kind of zhuzhing up the ends of my flowers a little bit. And that is my card for today. Very simple. I left the rest of the card clean and white. The only other change that I made off screen was to round 2 of the corners, which you will see in the still shots. So I hope you enjoyed this look at a couple of the products that I got in my haul from the Greetery, and I will be continuing to use these. In fact, I repeated the process and made another group of flowers to put on an A2 version of this card, which you can see here. So I have kind of 2 for the price of 1, my sympathy card and a birthday card. I hope you enjoyed this video today. Thank you so much for watching. Click like and subscribe if you enjoyed this, and we'll see you again very soon.